What's going on, everybody? Happy Friday. I appreciate all of y'all tuning into this podcast. If you've watched any of my previous podcast episodes or this one, I appreciate it. If you've subscribed, thank y'all so much. It means a lot to me. Participated in the comment section. Follow me on social media. All of that means a lot to me. I like to, not only talk about sports, but talk about sports with all of you, talking about film breakdowns, prospect rankings, what you think a football team should do, what your favorite team should do in free agency or in the draft, what they struggle with, what they can work on. All of the little nitty gritty details about football when it comes to watching film and all of that, I like to do. And then to have conversations about it, a group think type of environment where everyone's kind of gaining more knowledge from each other and that sort of thing, I really like, I really enjoy. Within 2 weeks, we're going to be doing a prospect review film breakdown on Illinois defensive tackle Jerzon Newton. I've only watched a couple minutes of his tape, but what I've seen from those couple minutes is it's one of the best defensive tapes from a defensive lineman I've seen in a long time. Now, I've only done this for a couple years. I've only studied film this thoroughly and learned about it for a couple years, but what he has on tape, all of the nuanced details he excels at, and then he has just all the physicals. So every tool, everything you could look for in a prospect, he checks all the boxes. But enough about draft season, because there's still some teams out there, at least 8, that have a chance to win the Super Bowl. Who do I like in those matchups? What do I think each team has to do to win the game? I'll give you my picks. I know my picks usually for NFL really bad, but in college football it's been pretty good. Hopefully I can bring some of that luck from college football into the NFL, get it down. I'll tell you why I'm a little worried about the 1 seeds. But yeah, it's gonna be, we've got a lot, of course. As you've heard from that intro so far, we've got a lot to talk about, a lot to discuss. Let's just get it and break down into it. Of course, as y'all know, that's textbook. So now let's start off with the divisional playoffs so far. Let's go with the first game we're going to see on Saturday. And before I get a little bit into that, what's your favorite meal? What's your favorite go-to? Do you watch at your friend's house, someone's house for the playoffs? Is it wings? Is it pizza? Is it hot dogs? Is it hamburgers? Is there something special that you have going? You have got going? Maybe you go to a bar somewhere else, like Buffalo Wild Wings, the Dave and Buster's, to get that environment, watch the game, wings, whatnot. Let me know in the comment section what y'all do, and let's get into the game itself. So Houston Texans, Baltimore Ravens, divisional round, ESPN, for a chance to go to the AFC Championship game. Now, these two teams met in week 1, and it was everything you'd expected it to be for a rookie quarterback starting in his first ever football game. CJ Stroud's first pass was completed to himself. And I know Baltimore won, but there was some, watching, I guess, highlights. Highlights is only a couple of minute clips about the game, but watching that, at halftime it was 7-6, so this was still a fairly close game. And that Houston, of course, each of these teams have most likely found out what they struggle with, what they do really well. And the first game is always kind of we have to feel it out and understand what type of team, what type of players we have that translate into game time situations, scenarios. So the Houston Texans have gotten better, but the Baltimore Ravens have also gotten better. There's a lot of things that there's actually not a lot, but there's a couple things I see with them that I'm like, okay, Houston can take advantage of that. But then when you watch their games later on in the season, they're just so well coached, and every issue that they have beginning in the season, either in the middle or the end of it, they cover up and they find ways to address it. So, for instance, an example right here. Baltimore Ravens their defense. Now, they're going to be without Marlon Humphrey in this game. That's a significant blow. But they struggled up against Sean McVay, and we know the coaching tree. McVay, Slowick, Shanahan. They all came from. So very most likely similar offensive minds, philosophies, somewhat playbooks. The Baltimore Ravens weren't able to have their best day defensively, and we saw how close that game was. Now, fast forward to the San Francisco 49ers game. Again, Shanahan, McVay, the coaching tree. It was a different story, and they were just able to obliterate San Fran with their speed, quickness. They rely on their safeties a lot. That's one of the things that their defensive coordinator, he was the defensive coordinator at Michigan. Another thing you should pay attention to. C.J. Stroud, in his first year at Ohio State, or actually when Michigan was able to, get on their run in that 2021 season when they finally beat Ohio State. At that time, just for that 1 year, the Ravens defensive coordinator was the defensive coordinator at Michigan. C.J. Stroud was the quarterback at Ohio State. So these two have about as best as advanced scouting report on each other than I get anyone in the league. Because they know, for those of you who don't know this rivalry, it's 365, 24/7. Every second is devoted to watching the team's film, constantly finding out little things that you can take advantage of and those sorts of things. So these two have about as best a scouting report on each other as it goes in the league. Now, going back to the Baltimore Ravens defense, like I say, they rely on their safeties. Their linebackers are absolutely phenomenal. The best linebacking core in the league. They're safeties, but with much more size, and they have the ability to fit the gaps in the run game and be able to cover the middle of the field, which is extremely valuable nowadays because we see a lot of teams want to attack the middle of the field. So they rely on their safeties. Their corners, are they, star-studded names and anything like that? No, but they get the job done. Like, their corners do really good. Defensive line, they get at it. One thing I think the Texans can take advantage of is really in man-to-man. Like I said, Marlon Humphrey isn't going to be in this game. The Ravens rarely do it, but if they do, find ways to take advantage of that. And like with stacked wide receivers on the line of scrimmage, the Ravens struggle with that. But of course, there's really not a whole lot of kinks in this Baltimore Ravens team or in the armor. I mean, if you're finding weaknesses with this team or trying to find any, it's little things like, okay, well, if I had to, I could say this. And of course, the Ravens gonna use their speed. What you most likely see the Texans get a similar game plan from last week. Move the pocket for C.J. Stroud. A lot of rollouts, a lot of play action, that sort of thing. So if you're the Baltimore Ravens, you're just gonna have to pressure C.J. Stroud and make him be an off-script, off-platform passer. That's what you have to do and get pressure up the middle as quickly and as much as you can. Now, for the Houston Texans, or I should say for the Baltimore Ravens offense, again, there's not a whole lot of kinks in the armor of this team. You look at the games that they lost, like the Colts. We're not going to count the Steelers game, although they did lose that one. The final regular season game against Steelers, we're not going to count that one, even though they did lose it. The first time they met with the Steelers and the Cleveland Browns, they really played with their food, and they're all games that really they should have won. Should have won those games. Maybe they were kind of messing around, playing a little bit prevent, a relaxed foot off the gas pedal. And it just, like I said, just goes to show there's not too many kinks in the armor with this team. Now, offense, if you're the Texans defense, okay, maybe the game plan from week 1 you had might work, but I wouldn't consider it. What you'll have to do, and I've seen a couple teams do this, is condense and collapse the pocket. Like, teams will send the Ravens' offensive line struggles with pressures in the A gap. You're gonna have to send a lot of pressures there, and of course, Lamar Jackson is the most dynamic athlete. And watching the film, he's become an improved passer, and you just see what a great offensive coordinator does for your star quarterback. Just you have to condense the pocket and eliminate the rush lanes inside the pocket for Lamar Jackson. Now, he can this year, if he's in the pocket, he will dominate. And he will find ways to pick you apart defensively. And the second thing for the Texans is the Ravens' run game for their running backs. It's not much. I mean, they lose Keaton Mitchell, J.K. Dobbins to injuries. Justice Hill, is he going to be that much of a difference maker? Because now he has had some good plays, reps, but that Ravens offensive line is so fantastic that and the holes are so wide open that it's hard not to gain a couple of yards. And you can make do with just a little bit, right? Those are the things that I see the Texans can do, what they should do. Pressure Lamar. Same goes for the Baltimore Ravens. Pressure C.J. Stroud, but try to make C.J. Stroud become a off-script, off-platform, outside the pocket thrower where he has to play Superman. Who I like in this game, now it's not the stuff that I like with the, details, advanced analytics, advanced scouting reports on the game, but you always feel worrisome about a team that's been one of the hottest, if not, and the best team in the league, but that's had 2 weeks of rest. Like, are they going to come out really slouchy? Are they going to be, I'm sure they'll come out prepared, but is there going to be a little bit of rust to them? That's the thing you're always worried about, because if you've played sports, if you've played football, you know how far momentum goes. It's like an overall boost or sort of skill boost. When you have that confidence and you have that momentum going into the playoffs, going into these crunch time games, that is a significant boost for your football team. And of course, we know the story. The Baltimore Ravens were playing up against a team of destiny in 2019, a team that was in the AFC South. Ravens had the best record in the NFL, were the best team in the NFL. Came out, it felt like unprepared, rusty, those sort of things that I've mentioned, and they lost that football game. I'm still going to go with the Baltimore Ravens here just because I feel like the speed that they have defensively, and there's not been much for the Houston Texans in terms of the run game. And what their defensive coordinator did at Michigan, when him and when Stroud was at Ohio State, that and the unique looks that they throw, I think they can just take advantage of. Baltimore Ravens have the pass catchers, they have the weapons. Lamar Jackson is playing at an MVP level. I'm still going to stick with the Baltimore Ravens because they know that bad taste that they had in their mouth when they were one of the best teams in the NFL in 2019. And, of course, they go up against a team of destiny in the AFC South, lose that game. So they know how prepared that they have to be. Now let's talk about the other one seed, but in the NFC. Same thing can be said for them, right? Although this is for the 2021-2022 playoffs. But the roles are reversed. Green Bay Packers were the 1 seed in the 2021-2022 season. Go up against this team that's been getting really hot in the San Francisco 49ers. It's a low-scoring game, but the 49ers find a way to squeeze that game out. Now the roles reverse. 49ers are that number 1 team. Packers are this team that beat Dallas in Dallas. Heading on over to San Fran in the Bay Area. Playing the best football that they've played this year. The Packers are. And you feel the element of maybe there's going to be a lot of rust. Now what I the teams that have the bye, what I recommend they do, get the ball first. Because we know that 49ers offense, they're like the Golden State Warriors in their, prime run from 2014, I guess up until now, because it feels like it's over. When Curry and Thompson were able to get going, start hitting threes, it felt just like an avalanche, and they go on to this huge run. Opponents, there's just too much skill on this team. And when they do go on those runs, it feels just like a death blow to a lot of these teams. And then for the Green Bay Packers, the issue that I have with them is their defense. Like, yeah, their defense got turnovers versus Dallas. But late in the game, Dallas was able to move the football on them. They're able to score, get into the red zone. Now the Packers defense was most likely saying this game's over, it's wrapped up, playing a lot of prevent. We can allow, these 10, 15-yard plays, stuff like that. We just can't allow anything deep. But that's just the issue I have. And this is a 49ers team that a lot of them on that roster were there when they were in the NFC Championship game against the Rams and how close that was. And then there's still a couple of guys, some of the core players on that roster that were there in the Super Bowl versus Kansas City. And they know, of course, last year Purdy gets hurt up against the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC Championship game. So they know the heartbreak that they've suffered and how close that they were to get into this goal. You feel like that's a team that's going to go into this game well prepared. They're not going to be overlooking the Packers or, like I said, overlooking the Packers, thinking that this one's already wrapped up and that they just have to kind of, walk it out, those sort of things. No, this is going to be a dogfight. It's going to be an arms race, probably, most likely a high-scoring football game. It's like for the 49ers too. I mean, it's hard to find any kinks in the armor. If there was one I could have said earlier this year, it was probably the secondary, and they've had a lot of injuries there too. But as of late, they've been playing really well. Charvarius Ward, he's stepping up big time. He's becoming the cornerback one for them. And he's getting a lot of timely interceptions, turnovers, takeaways, that sort of deal. We all know the defensive line that the 49ers have. Like, it's hard to find anything that they really struggle with in this game. But, I mean, the Packers right now, like I said, and I hate to sound repetitive, but they're playing, I think, the best football right now out of all the teams that are in the playoffs. What are they going to have to do? I mean, offensively, it's going to be just kind of a similar game plan. Move the pocket for Jordan Love, like last week. Move the pocket for him. And you can tell he's feeling really confident. I mean, these throws that he's making where it's Aaron Rodgers, Brett Favre-esque. That's when you see a quarterback doing that type of stuff, that's comfortability right there. For this one, in terms of who I go with, I'll take the 49ers. And the deal breaker for me is they know how close that they've gotten, and yet the goal was unfinished. They know the type of team they have, offensively, what they can do, defensively, how they attack you in the trenches. Give me the 49ers, but I'll say with both of the 1 seeds, I would not be surprised at all if both of them lose this weekend. Now moving on to the Sunday games. It's Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen. I think it's they met in the 2020 playoffs, AFC Championship game. In the second, I think it's part 3 this time in the postseason. We know that game in the divisional round. I mean, instant classic, 13 seconds, Mahomes and Allen just going back and forth. So what does Kansas City have to do? Kelce has been in a slump all regular season. Maybe he finds his footing in the postseason. Although at this point in time, you kind of feel like what you see is what it'll be and what it is. I don't know how, if you're going to go to being who you were and their identity we all think them to be, which is this passing team that's just going to empty the clip and all that, how much can you rely on Rashee Rice? I mean, he's playing really well right now, but he is a rookie. This is the postseason. It's a different element, monster, in the postseason. So what Kansas City has to do, in my opinion, is let's go away from this traditional drop back, emptying the clip, slinging the football across the yard. Let's rely on Isaiah Pacheco. Because we saw Buffalo, and we know they have a lot of injuries on their defense, but we saw them in last year's divisional round get dog walk in the trenches and with the Cincinnati Bengals using their running game to be able to keep that one in distance. That's what Kansas City has to do. You have to rely on Isaiah Pacheco. And then it's just run and defense. Traditional old school football. Spagnuolo. He's going to throw up a lot of crazy looks. But Josh Allen is more scary when he's scrambling outside the pocket than he is when he stays in the pocket. So you have to contain him. And we know he's tough to bring down. I mean, he's strong. Hardly anybody can bring him down. So you can't rely on a lot of these blitzes from your corners, linebackers. A lot of them, he's going to either shrug them off, stiff arm them, or just escape with his speed and use his mobility. So you have to keep him on the pocket. Throw a lot of disguise looks. Now, these two teams, usually when I say this, because it kind of scientifically, theoretically, happens a lot, especially in the NFL. When you have two teams that meet in the regular season, who meet again in the postseason, the team that won the game the first time, second time come around the playoffs, they lose that game. Just because they feel like, the team that won the game feel like we can use the same game plan, while the other team is looking at ways that they can do things differently. Now, for the other team, could they be, the team that won, could they be looking at what they could do differently? Yeah, but you're also playing a guessing game of what the other team is going to do, how they're going to attack you offensively, defensively, and that's just not something you really want to do. For the Buffalo Bills, they, since hiring Joe Brady, bringing him on, they've got a different element. Like, it's not all Josh Allen. It's not, and I've been on record previously on this podcast, on social media, saying this is a Bills offense that relies too heavily on 17 and 14. And they don't have anyone outside of them that can really step up. Well, now James Cook is stepping up. You know, Gabe Davis, he'll go silent for 4 games, but one game he'll have 173 or 146 and a touchdown or 2. So how much is he going to step up? Because we've seen Dalton Kincaid, the rookie, give some nice production as well. But like I say, Bills, run the football, do the same thing that you have been doing since you've got Brady on the staff to be your offensive coordinator. And just with a sprinkle and a little touch of Josh Allen becoming what he was, when he and Mahomes met in that divisional instant classic game, of him just being Superman. Now, in the Lions-Buccaneers game, before and in the wild card, if Detroit beat the Rams, I was feeling like, okay, either Philadelphia, I think Detroit can take them. We saw what Philadelphia has been as of late. And then with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, like whoever won that game on Monday night, I felt like the Detroit Lions could take pretty easily. Well, now that it's the Buccaneers and we see these two teams again, like I said, met in the regular season. Usually the Lions won in the regular season. Usually in the postseason, the team that lost in the regular season wins in the postseason. Watching that game again, both these teams are really good in the trenches. Like offensive line, defensive line, they're really good. So the running game really wasn't able to get anything going for both sides. And the Lions had complete control of that game throughout, but the scoreboard says differently. It was 20-3. So for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, it's going to be about how far can Baker Mayfield take you? How far can the combination of Mayfield and Evans go? Because we know that Detroit Lions secondary struggles, and they struggled up against one of the best passing attacks coming into the playoffs in the LA Rams. But they were able to make some adjustments in the second half, and that game turned from being a shootout to a defense duel. For the like I say, for the Buccaneers, how far can Mayfield and Evans take you? And you have to lean on Rachaad White. I know I may sound repetitive when talking about these matchups, saying use the run game, stop the run, all of those sort of things, because the run game in the postseason matters. This is going to be in a dome, and if it was Tampa Bay, it was going to be in warm weather, so the elements really aren't going to affect this game. But still have to run the football. Like Gibbs and Rachaad White are going to be the difference makers in this game. Now, Lions use the playmakers you have. Laporta is your luxury, and he takes you over the top. Because Amon-Ra St. Brown, his releases off the line of scrimmage, his route running, it's all fantastic. And the things he does in the slot operating, fantastic. And then again for the Lions, how far can Jared Goff take you? Much like Baker Mayfield, like how far can those two quarterbacks duel it out, and who turns the ball over less? Those are my keys to the game. Now, of course, things I'll say defensively, and a couple things I'll say about final things I'll say about this matchup. Which defensive line has the better day? Because Aiden Hutchinson, if you're the Lions, you have to use him all over the formation. Like have him line up in the A gap, B gap. Don't just always consistently have him on the outside. And there was something I saw them do a lot in the wild card game versus the Rams. So line him up all over the formation. And for the Buccaneers on the defensive line, Calijah Kancey had his best game as a pro last week versus the Philadelphia Eagles. We know the type of players the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have on that defensive line. Shaq Barrett, Vita Vea. They get a lot of pressures, and they collapse the pocket in the backfield. Calijah Kancey coming out of the draft was really highly touted. A lot of people were giving him the comparison to Aaron Donald. Well, last week he showed what he can do. If he gives you that same performance this week, it's a huge luxury for them. Now the Detroit Lions do have a good offensive line, but it's a tough task to try to guard those three guys. Now, as for who I like in this game, give me the Detroit Lions. Just because, it's going to be in home. Divisional playoff game for them. With the chance to go to the NFC Championship game. And then who knows the outcome of San Fran, Green Bay. You could be hosting an NFC Championship game, which is something, and I would guess, every NFL fan's existence, they would have never thought of Detroit Lions and hosting NFC Championship game. So you know what it meant for the city. The fans in there, the environment is going to be electric. If the Lions get rolling early on, the whole place, the stadium might just collapse. Give me the Lions in that one just because they know what's at task, and they're a good football team on both defense, on both trenches. So those are my game picks for the game. I've got Detroit, Baltimore, San Fran, and I'm sorry I didn't give you the Chiefs Bills one. You know it's going to be Mahomes' first road playoff game. There isn't a vein, nerve in Patrick Mahomes' body that isn't fired up for this one. Just because everyone's talking about Mahomes, he hasn't played on a playoff game on the road. He's going to be laser focused, dialed in. Give me Kansas City. I like Kansas City in that one. So I've got, like I said, these divisional games and who's moving on to the championship weekend. Lions, Chiefs, Ravens, 49ers. Let me know what y'all think. Who you have in the going on advancing to championship weekend in the comments. I appreciate it. And after or before you do that, why don't you go onto the description? There's all the links to my social media are in there. I'm talking about my Spotify, Twitter, TikTok. All of that stuff is in there. Click the links, hit follow. Let me know in the comments section. I appreciate it. Thank y'all. It means a lot to me. Now on to some head coaching news, talking about which team is interviewing who's going on for second interviews. The Atlanta Falcons are interviewing Bill Belichick for a second time. That seems it's been reported a lot that Bill Belichick is the Falcons' ideal candidate. There's someone that they want to be their head coach for this upcoming season. And let me ask y'all what you think if the Falcons were to hire Bill Belichick. How are you grading this move? Let me know in the comments what you think. For me, I mean, I look at it and with someone of Bill Belichick's age, you always wonder because the game is always changing. There's a lot of one position that you valued really highly the past couple of years, next couple of years, it's a lot different, right? I mean, the NFL in the 80s, 90s was about running the football and all of that, and then we see this change to these kind of air raid offenses, a lot of shotgun, pistol, that sort of thing. Uh, I'm not saying Bill Belichick, the game has passed him up, because I still think he's a very good head coach, but it's something you kind of have to wonder. Like, you wonder, Bill Belichick, for as long as he's been in the league, he knows, you know, his philosophy of coaching, all of that. Does it translate to now? And now, like I said, he's been coaching for a long time, and there's a lot that's changed from when he started coaching to the middle tenure of his coaching career in New England to now. And then of course there's the talk of, well, the only reason why he won all these Super Bowls, got all these accolades, and the success that they had was because of Tom Brady. Now, the evidence we have that supports that argument is since Tom Brady's left, they haven't made the postseason. The team isn't as feared or as good as we thought they were. And I know he in Atlanta, he's most likely not going to be the general manager there. But when he was the general manager at New England, it started to fall down, and I would say it started to fall down after that. I think it was when after New England won their Super Bowl up against the Rams. Proceeding on, it was just a different New England Patriots. They didn't draft particularly well. They didn't draft well really at all. You look at their drafts the past couple of years. Really not great, not ideal. But for the Atlanta Falcons, he's still a great head coach. He knows defense a lot. You have to figure they didn't have a lot of talent in New England. Now, like I say, with Atlanta, probably not, most likely not going to be the general manager. Statistically, they had a top 10 defense, and they were a team that didn't invest in the draft heavily on the defensive front. Like when we talk about first or second round draft picks, it wasn't on the defensive end. It was offense, playmakers, that sort of thing. But I'm interested to see how this works. Let me know what you think. If I were to grade it, I would say right now, B minus. Of course, the season and how it goes later on will be determined. But they have the pieces offensively. If they can get the offensive coordinator right, it's just another step in the right direction. But as for how it works, I'm not going to say anything or predict anything because it's too early, and he's most likely not most likely not, but there is a chance he isn't the guy for the job that Atlanta chooses. But we'll just see how these things play out. Now, for the Dallas Cowboys and their head coaching search, they're going to stick with Mike McCarthy. And, I mean, to no surprise, right? I mean, everybody wanted some. You had some Dallas fans, a lot of people in the media say Mike McCarthy needs to be fired. When Mike, let's go back to the. I'm not going to say Mike McCarthy is a fantastic coach. Now, is he a good coach? Yeah, he's a good coach. When it comes to the crunch time, and you look at what he's done in Green Bay as well, with Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback, like there's a lot to be desired, especially when you have A Rod as your quarterback. Dallas, their past 3 years, they've gone 12-5. I think they've won the division twice. It's scary to know where the drop off is, but we also know where the team is, right? They're gonna front run regular season. Everyone's gonna have all this hoopla talking about them. Maybe they might go to the Super Bowl. That this is their year. Only in the postseason to get beat down up against Green Bay or San Fran, any one of those teams. I mean, you just knew it was coming. Like Jerry Jones is not. He wants to tell everybody why he's right and show everybody why he's right, as opposed to doing the right thing. Like, right? How do you fire Jimmy Johnson when he's won you all these Super Bowls, and then how do you fire him of that? It has to be ego and manufacturing. I think it was the Herschel Walker trade, which is what Jimmy Johnson did, but Jimmy got too much credit for it, so Jerry got upset. And then look at the coaches that they've had since. Everyone that kind of takes a backseat, a step back to Jerry. They let Jerry do all the things. I mean, I haven't seen in any sport, that's baseball, basketball, NFL, heck, even hockey. I haven't seen where a team president is doing interviews like he's a player post game. That just again speaks to his ego. You know they were going to keep him. Dallas has a lot of questions to ask because you're going to have to pay Prescott, and then you're going to have to pay CeeDee Lamb, and then Micah Parsons, and those three are 95, anywhere from 95 to 90% of the team and the production and what they put up, and what you have to focus on if you're an opposing team. And of course, they have a lot of free agents this year. I think their left tackle Smith is going to be a free agent. Lot of questions, and Dallas. I think when they fired Jason Garrett, they waited till or let him go. They waited till he finished his contract. McCarthy still has 1 year left. I mean, it was just something you knew was going to happen. And then speaking on the team in Philadelphia, it looks like they're going to keep Sirianni. You've had a lot of Eagles players voice their support. I think it was Fletcher Cox. He was voicing his support for Sirianni. When things started to go off the rails for this Eagles team, I think it was Jordan Mailata talking. The reporters were asking him something about the culture in the locker room, if anybody's lost belief. He basically put all those things aside, denied them. I mean, I look at the Sirianni tenure, and the only fantastic season was when they had both coordinators. Now, yes, does having both coordinators benefit you? Yeah, and then we can look back at it and say, well, how much of a head coach are you if both your coordinators were just absolutely fantastic and worthy to get head coaching jobs? And of course, you're the head coach, so it's your style of offense. It's also your style of defense. You're the one in the interview process for these guys, for your offensive coordinator and your defensive coordinator, for your entire staff. And I mean, it was just an utter failure. Like, I guess the bright side you could say for the Philadelphia Eagles is it didn't look pretty all year. The offensive playbook was like from Madden. It was so basic. It was from high school. Defensively, it was a lot better than when they got Patricia defensively. Now, do they have the personnel? Do they have the players? No. We saw for the defensive backs and everyone on defense, it was bad tackling angles, bad tackling in general. Couldn't cover. Secondary is aging. Only rely on their defensive line, and at some point in time, it felt like the defensive line just lost their gas. But yeah, it looks like they're gonna stick with Sirianni. He's got to hit another home run for offense and defensive coordinator, or find someone, find a diamond in the rough, something like that. For these offensive coordinator and defense coordinator positions, it's rarely that you bring in someone who was an offensive coordinator for another team. You're going to have to find someone who was a QB coach, a defensive backs coach, something like that. Elevate them up. Do I like this move? I mean, I guess, but the way I see it is this is the best head coaching search in a long time, if not ever. I mean, you have so many quality candidates. Like the ones I think of like, okay, yeah, these guys can be fantastic or are going to be fantastic head coaches. Of course, Vrabel, and then I look at the Ravens defensive coordinator, McDonald. I think his name is, and then of course everyone's going to be talking about Bill Belichick. There's a couple others I could think of right now, but those are the three that I'm really like, oh, okay, that those, and then of course Harbaugh, but I mean, who knows? It's kind of 50-50. Is he going to stay at Michigan? Is he going to go to the NFL? If he does, Chargers are probably first on his list. I mean, if you're going to stick with the head coach you have right now, if your team like the Bears, Philadelphia, the Cowboys, you'd better be right, because now I always say the grass doesn't always greener on the other side, but at sometimes that, I guess, saying is debunked. And we'll see how it pans out for those teams that decide to stick with the coach that they have right now, even though there's a lot of question marks about them, and they have this year to answer them or fail the test. Now, for the Chicago Bears, there's been a lot of talk about them and their offensive coordinator role. When I'd watch this Bears team on film, and sometimes even in the game, it's the offensive game plan. It had its moments, but then you also feel like there's got to be some kind of coaching element. Like there was just too many misassignments with the offensive line. Are they developing the quarterback right? Are they putting their star players in the best situation to succeed? Why are we having wide receivers block Rashawn Gary? Why are we having tight ends, guys that we're bringing up who are third, fourth on the depth chart to block these defensive linemen? It was just a disaster. So there's been a lot of talk about them. They've been doing a lot of thorough research for their offensive coordinator position, interviewing, I think it's Clint Kubiak. They're interviewing the Rams QB coach, passing coordinator. I think that's the one they really want to go with, to see what he's done with that unit, and all the shifts that the Rams do. Like, you watch the Rams, and especially in that playoff game, they were shifting Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua at least 2 times. Tons of shifts, tons of motion, and the crazy things that they have. And it's always good to get a coach from the Shanahan, McVay, LaFleur, that kind of coaching tree. Yeah, and then they've interviewed, I think he's the Cliff Kingsbury. They interviewed Cliff Kingsbury. That one to me is the worst hire. I think that's the worst one you can do right there. Now, Kingsbury was good in the NFL, right? He had his moments. But then you look at the end product, and then I watched what USC was doing, and they were putting Caleb Williams. It was also basic too, and they were putting him in unadvantageous situations. And the playbook was really kind of bland. It was a lot of the same plays where they're sneaking out the tight end through the middle of the field on a RPO play action sort of thing. It was having 4 receivers wide. The 2 in the slots are either running hitches or goes, and then it's vice versa for the guys on the outsides. On the outside, it hitches or goes. I think a lot of Caleb Williams' struggles was because of their play calling, not a lot of creativity or anything such of that. So, I mean, one you want to hire, the Rams QB coach, passing coordinator, that's one you want to do. One you don't want to do, Cliff Kingsbury. And we've seen like when he was in the NFL, head coach of the Cardinals, we've seen the dispute and the disconnect between he and Kyler Murray. Those are my thoughts, Bears fans. If you're listening to this podcast, do you agree with me, or is there something I'm missing? Is there something different that you would like to weigh on? Let me know in the comment section. After you do that, check the link. Check the description. The links to my social media will be there. Make sure you like, subscribe, turn on the bell, hit the bell, turn on post notifications with all the stuff that we've got coming up. You don't want to miss it. It means a lot to me. I appreciate it. Now, for this final segment, a little bit of college football. The transfer portal is going absolutely crazy. Nuclear nuts, whatever you want to call it. It's always insanity, but it is this year. And with Saban retiring, like I said when Saban retired in the podcast, I think it was a couple weeks ago. We don't know how significant this thing is. Like, if you watch college football from the 2014 to like 2019 era, when it was kind of pre-NIL, and a lot of it was with these 5 stars and high school recruits picking schools, going to school, getting coached, getting developed, going into the NFL. There wasn't all this stuff about NIL and all of that, although there probably was, but a lot of it was kind of swept under the rug and hush-hush. But Alabama ruled. Just conquered, shredded the rest of college football from that era. You look at the star players that they've had and the 5 stars, all the #1 recruiting classes that they had. There's Jerry Jeudy, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Reuben Foster, Najee Harris, and then the quarterbacks, Hurts, Tua, all these players, Marlon Humphrey, Patrick Surtain, and there was a time also too where at Alabama, every recruiting class that Saban had won at least one national championship. And then all these star-studded players, they ruled. Being in the heart of the South, everyone that kind of grows up there, high school football recruit, you dream of getting that offer from Alabama, going over there, becoming like some of these other guys, being a first-round NFL draft pick, getting drafted into the NFL. And then once you start getting 1 or 2, like Julio Jones, he was that star-studded player that kind of put Alabama back from Saban, back on the map from Saban's recruiting class. And then it started to follow. You see all these other star-studded players go. Like, recruits from the South usually stay in the South, and when they do, it's Alabama first, and then you have the LSUs, the Georgias, and then of course that small time period of Clemson. And I'll be the first to say this: the South has the best football players. Like, you look at some of the best football players in the NFL, it's always from the South. And then you sprinkle in Texas, a little bit of California, and all those best players were going to Alabama. Now Nick Saban's gone, and that dynasty of Alabama is now kind of dwindling away. Like, it might rise back to what it was, but those are huge shoes to fill of Nick Saban's. And we're seeing all the transfers from Alabama. The players who decommitted are now decommitting. And like I said, for recruiting, national championships, everything else concerning college football, it was Alabama in the field. Now that Alabama's gone, who's going to be that next power? It's feeling like Georgia. If you all pay attention to high school recruiting and college football, Caleb Downs, he's in the portal now. One of the most coveted transfer portal players since Justin Fields, Caleb Williams, when they were in the portal. A Sunday player. I have him going in the top 15 as a safety or a defensive back in the NFL draft when he does declare. I remember watching a podcaster. He was telling a story about Caleb Downs saying Caleb was doing these defensive back workouts, and there was wide receiver, skill position player workouts at another field, not too far away, within running, walking distance. And when he's done with the defensive back drills, he goes on over to the wide receiver skill position drills in back. And he was the only one that was doing it. So you see the type of player he is and what that speaks volumes for. But now that he's in the transfer portal, and it's feeling like he's going to announce today, I think at some time, maybe in the evening, late night, where he intends to go. Lots of the people that have the recruiting intel, transfer portal intel, are predicting him to go to Georgia, and we're kind of seeing Georgia kind of take over and fill the shoes of what Alabama was in the SEC and everything else. But and then we're seeing, their number one quarterback in the 2024 class, Julian Sain. He's now into the transfer portal, and there's a lot of talk about Kalen DeBoer, the new head coach, kind of pushed Sain out. And I mean, just all these transfers. It leaves you speechless, and because those of us who watched it for so long never thought this would happen, and now it's happening, and everything else is kind of just in a frenzy. And so Caleb Downs, he's deciding tonight. Feels like it's going to be Georgia, although Ohio State, who when they were recruiting him out of high school, they finished runner-up to Alabama. Ohio State is putting on the full court press to try and get Caleb Downs and a lot of these other players as well. But it's a new era in college football. If it wasn't already with the transfer portal and NIL and all of that, it's completely new now. So it'll be interesting. Where does all that star-studded talent go? It feels like Georgia, but if it gets dispersed around and in a 12-team college football playoff format, things get really interesting. And now, talking about college football, and talking about the Ohio State-Michigan thing, because in the transfer portal, Oregon, Florida State, Texas, most definitely, they got a lot of Alabama transfers. Those are the teams that are taking over. They're doing exceptionally well in the transfer portal, adding a lot of star-studded talent. And Ole Miss, I forgot to add them to Lane Kiffin. But Ohio State, okay, they've done some things in the transfer portal, like they get the number one running back, they get a quarterback, potentially get Caleb Downs, Julian Sain, maybe the offensive tackle 5-star, Caden Proctor. He's in the transfer portal too. Maybe they make, a lot of schools are going to make a full court press for him too. But we saw the players that Ohio State brought back. A lot of them predicted to go really high in the NFL draft. And yet they're bringing them back. Like the duality of what losing to Michigan 3 times and seeing them become national champions does to you. I don't know if I've seen any program in America that when their rival wins a national championship, all these guys that are predicted to go high in the NFL draft all of a sudden come back. And then they're just, absolutely putting on the full court press for every transfer, trying to build this kind of super team. And we're seeing Ohio State is making a lot of changes to their staff. Like a lot of people get on Ryan Day because his play calling, and he's kind of the offensive coordinator, head coach, his play calling has suffered. Well, now they bring in Bill O'Brien. A lot of Ohio State fans are feeling conflicted about it. But what I'll say for that is there's a lot of... Am I a huge fan of Bill O'Brien? No. But what works in college football is when you bring in guys from the NFL. Like we saw what Bill O'Brien did with Bryce Young. Bryce Young threw for a ton of yards. I can't remember the exact number, but it was a lot. 47 touchdowns to 7 interceptions, won a Heisman, and Saban, keeps bringing him back. And Saban's had him on his staff. Bill Belichick's also had him on his staff. So he's although, there's a lot of, I guess, scrutiny, talk about him. A lot of these top head coaches that we all view really highly still have him on their staff. It's going to be the most talent he's had. I mean, when he was at New England this year, or what did they have? They didn't have a lot. They didn't even have much. Uh, Still able to kind of somewhat produce with Zappy and whatever they had. I'll let the hire play out itself, but I think it's always good to bring someone from the NFL to the college ranks. College defenses are usually much more easier, and then the vice versa can be said, right? You bring a college head coach to the NFL. So Ohio State, losing to Michigan and seeing them win a national championship does to a program. We're seeing Ohio State put that in full effect. And that just about wraps up this podcast. To those of you who thugged it out, stayed the whole 55 minutes, about 46 seconds right here, I appreciate it. Thank you so much. It means a lot to me. I love to, like I said, I love to engage, talk sports with all of you. I mean, if there's one thing, if you ever meet me, if there's one thing I can do constantly, and it's a good conversation starter, I always like to talk about sports, no matter what it is: football, basketball, college football. And I'm usually pretty quiet, but sports gets me. Sports, I can talk all day, 24/7 about it. So I appreciate, spending this time with y'all, having a lot of discussions about these sports topics, a lot of groupthink. Like I said, within 2 weeks at least, we're going to be doing a prospect review film breakdown on Jer'Zhan Newton. What I've seen from it, I have him rated a lot highly than you would think, and that a lot of these draft analysts do. But that's a wrap. Follow me on social media. The links will be in my description. I tweet a lot there. I post a lot of things on social media. So go ahead, give me a follow. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell for post notifications. You don't want to miss any of the content we got coming up. I appreciate it. Y'all have a blessed day, a blessed Friday. God bless y'all. Take care. And until next time, deuces.